All right, get ready to dive deep, folks. We're taking on Gary Taubes' Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It.
Oh, yeah. This one's a big one.
You know, I asked you to take a look at some excerpts.
Right.
And this book really shakes things up.
Oh, it does.
When it comes to what we think we know about weight loss.
It really does.
It really challenges the conventional wisdom.
Taubes, he doesn't hold back at all. He's like, everything you think you know, wrong.
Yeah.
Challenges like the basic foundation of how we think about weight gain. You know, that calories in, calories out model.
Right. That's like the gospel.
What we all assume.
Yeah. Eat less, move more, and that's it.
Exactly.
And he throws that right out the window.
Yep.
So that's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
It is fascinating.
We're going to explore why Taubes thinks that equation is way too simple.
Yeah.
What he thinks is really behind weight gain.
What's really going on?
The real driver.
So get ready for some aha moments, folks.
Yeah, you'll have a few of those.
Because this is going to, I think, change the way you think about food.
Absolutely.
And your body.
One of the things that I think is so compelling about Taubes is that he doesn't just make these grand pronouncements. You know, he doesn't just throw out opinions.
He backs it up.
He's got the receipts. He supports his arguments with a ton of research, scientific studies, historical examples. I mean, he even goes into how we came to believe that fat is the enemy.
The history of fat, right?
Like the history of how we got to this point.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating in itself.
Right. It's like, how did we get here?
Exactly. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about nutrition.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting. Before the 1960s, the idea that carbohydrates were fattening, that was mainstream.
That was the common thought.
It wasn't fat, it was carbs.
It's amazing how things have shifted.
It really is. It's such a head scratcher.
It's like, how did we get to this point?
Yeah. And that historical context, it adds this whole other layer to the discussion.
Right.
Really makes you rethink everything.
So, okay, let's just jump right into it. Let's jump right into Taubes' central argument.
Yeah.
Insulin.
Yeah.
He basically says that insulin is the puppet master.
It's the control center.
Of fat storage.
Right.
It's not
the key.
It's not calories.
Yeah.
It's insulin.
Insulin is driving the bus.
And so understanding how insulin works is crucial to cracking the code of weight loss.
It's the key to the whole puzzle.
It's the key.
Yeah.
So explain that a little more, because I know a lot of people out there are saying, wait, what? Insulin? I don't get it.
So he argues that this calories in, calories out, it totally overlooks the power of hormones, and specifically insulin.
Right.
So when we eat carbohydrates, our bodies release insulin to process that glucose, right? That sugar. And Taubes is saying that it's this insulin surge that really decides, are we storing fat or are we burning it for energy?
Okay. So it's like a switch.
Insulin is the driver.
Yeah, right.
It's deciding, are we going to hit the gas or slam on the brakes?
It's a great analogy. Yeah.
Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So when insulin levels are high, it's like you're slamming on the brakes. You're telling your body, store that fat.
Right.
And then conversely, when insulin is low, it's like you're hitting the gas, you're burning fat for fuel.
Okay. So what does this mean for all those diets out there that are just focused on
Oh, good question.
Cutting calories?
Taubes would say, if you're just cutting calories, especially if you're still eating a lot of carbs, you're kind of spinning your wheels.
Okay.
Yeah. You're working really hard, but you're not really getting anywhere. And he points to studies like the Women's Health Initiative, where
what women were told, reduce your calories. And they were on a low-fat diet.
Right. That was the one where they said, eat less fat.
Eat less fat, yeah.
Yeah.
And they did reduce their calorie intake.
Right.
Significantly.
Yeah.
But they barely lost any weight.
Yeah. And if calories were the only thing that mattered.
Oh, they should have been dropping pounds like crazy.
They should have been super skinny by the end of it.
Right.
And they weren't.
So that's a big problem for the calories out theory.
That doesn't fit.
Exactly. It doesn't fit the model.
So that's where Taubes' argument gets really interesting.
Yeah, it's juicy.
Right, because if calories alone were the determinant of weight loss, those women should have been
size 0, runway models, but they weren't.
Yeah, and Taubes is saying that's because
it's because of the insulin.
It's because of the insulin.
It's not just about how much you're eating; it's what you're eating.
Right. Okay.
That's driving that insulin response.
So it's not just how much we eat.
Right.
It's what we eat
Exactly.
that impacts that insulin.
And how our body processes it.
Okay. And if you're eating a diet high in carbs.
Right. Especially the refined carbs and sugars.
Yeah.
You are constantly spiking your insulin levels, which is telling your body, store fat.
So it doesn't matter how many calories I'm eating.
It doesn't care about the calories.
If my insulin's going up.
Insulin is going up, storing fat.
I'm storing fat.
It's like a signal.
Okay.
It's telling your body, hold on to this.
Okay.
We might need it later.
So he's saying it's not just about how much we eat, but what we eat that influences that fat storage.
Totally.
Okay.
And to really illustrate this concept, Taubes uses this brilliant analogy.
Okay, I love analogies.
I know you do.
Because it makes it easier to understand.
Of a fuel partitioning gauge.
A fuel partitioning gauge, okay.
So think of it like the gas gauge in your car.
Okay.
But instead of F for full, it stands for fat.
Okay.
And E, instead of empty, it stands for energy.
Okay, so I got my fuel gauge, F for fat.
F for fat.
E for energy.
E for energy.
Got it.
And insulin is acting like the needle on that gauge.
Okay.
It's directing the flow of incoming calories.
So the more carbs I eat, the more insulin I release, the more that needle swings towards fat.
Swings towards fat, yeah.
On my gauge.
You got it.
Okay.
And that's why, he believes that simply cutting calories without thinking about the types of calories.
Yeah.
And specifically the carbohydrates.
Right.
It's not going to be the most effective path to weight loss.
Okay, this is already making me rethink my snack drawer.
It's a game changer.
But I have a question, though.
Yeah.
If everybody releases insulin when they eat carbs,
right?
Why do some people gain weight more easily than others?
The $1 million question.
Right. Like, we all know those people who can eat whatever they want and never gain an ounce.
Right. It's like, not fair.
And it's like, how? How are they doing that?
Well, that brings us to this fascinating concept of individual differences in insulin sensitivity.
Okay, explain that.
So Taubes explains that our genes, our metabolism, they play a huge role in how our body responds to insulin.
Okay.
Some people are just naturally more sensitive to insulin. Which means
their body
is just super efficient at storing fat.
Oh, so it's like they have
they got a special fuel gauge.
Like they have a super fuel efficient car and I'm driving around a gas guzzler.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not fair.
It's like some people have a gas guzzler and some people have a hybrid.
Yeah.
It's so not fair. It's not fair.
It's
like, but it is what it is. And that's why it's so important to understand our individual metabolic tendencies.
Okay. Right. Like what works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
And to make things even more complicated.
Oh, great.
Our insulin sensitivity can change over time.
Right. Okay.
Particularly as we get older.
Oh, great. Even worse.
Yeah.
So we're more likely to store fat as we age.
We do.
And on top of that, we're eating a diet that's probably making it worse.
That's the kicker.
Oh, it's a double whammy.
It's a double whammy.
Okay.
And this brings us to another key player in the whole fat storage equation.
Right.
Sugar.
Okay.
And specifically fructose.
Okay. I know we're supposed to avoid sugary drinks and candy and all that stuff, but fruit has fructose too.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
It does.
So what's
So it's not as simple as
the deal?
Just avoid all fructose.
Right.
Because fruit does have its benefit.
Yeah, fruit's good for you.
It does. But Taubes is suggesting that even fructose from natural sources
can contribute to weight gain.
Okay.
Especially if you're
already predisposed to storing fat easily.
Right. If you got that gas guzzler.
Got the gas guzzler metabolism.
You got to be careful.
Okay.
You got to be mindful.
So what's so different about fructose?
So
isn't it just sugar?
Fructose is metabolized differently than glucose. So glucose, it's kind of like the body's preferred energy source.
Okay.
It can be used by most of the cells in your body.
Right.
Fructose, on the other hand, it's primarily processed by the liver.
Okay.
And when we consume a lot of it, like way more than our liver can handle, it can lead to a buildup of fat in the liver.
Oh, in the liver. Okay.
Yeah, which isn't good.
Not good.
And over time, that can actually contribute to insulin resistance. So it's like this sneaky...
Okay, so it's like it doesn't spike my blood sugar the same way.
It doesn't have the same immediate effect as glucose, but it's kind of like a slow burn.
Right.
It's messing with your system.
Yeah, okay.
In the long run.
Okay, so even though it's not
like
spiking my blood sugar immediately.
Yeah, it's not like...
It can still cause problems down the road.
It can. It can make it harder for your body to process glucose effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why...
Which is a big part of...
He's saying that high fructose corn syrup, which is in everything.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Right. Like processed food, sugary drinks.
It's at the hidden sugar.
Yeah, he's saying that's a major culprit.
It's a big one.
In the obesity epidemic.
Yeah, it's not doing us any favors.
No, it's not. If we're constantly bombarding our poor livers with fructose from all these processed foods,
it's overload.
It's no wonder we're seeing such high rates of obesity.
And all these metabolic problems.
And all these other problems, right?
Yeah, it's all connected.
Here's what I'm wrestling with still.
Yeah.
Okay. If carbs are the real villains here, why do some people still lose weight on low-fat diets?
Okay, yeah.
Those have been popular for decades.
Right, for decades. That's a great question. And it's something that Taubes actually addresses head on in the book.
Okay.
He dives into, the nuances of why different diets work.
Okay.
Or seem to work.
Yeah.
Even if they're not directly targeting those evil carbs. So he's not saying all low-fat diets are bad. He's just saying they might be successful for a different reason than we think than they're claiming.
Okay, explain that.
So he argues that a lot of these popular diets, even the ones that are focused on reducing fat, they often unintentionally restrict the types of carbohydrates that are most likely to lead to weight gain.
Right.
Okay.
So think about it. If you're cutting out fatty foods, like, cheeseburgers, French fries, fried chicken, you're also cutting out the bun, the breading, the sugary sauces.
So even if they're not telling me to cut out carbs,
you're kind of doing it by default.
By cutting out the fat, you're
cutting out the carbs that come with it.
Right. Okay.
So that reduction in refined carbs, even if it's unintentional, can lead to weight loss because it's helping to lower your insulin levels.
It's like the sneaky backdoor approach.
Exactly. It's like a backdoor to carb restriction.
And that makes you realize that maybe we've been focusing on the wrong thing all along.
Yeah. It's a different way of thinking about it.
It's not the fat that's necessarily bad. It's just the carbs.
It's the carbs that are often...
that are triggering
paired with the fat.
The fat storage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that leads us to another...
It's kind of controversial.
This is like, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
Oh, Taubes makes.
Which is...
This is like, now we're challenging...
rethinking the role of fat.
Okay.
Particularly saturated fat in heart disease.
Okay, this is the big one.
This is the big one. Yeah.
I grew up, saturated fat was the devil.
Yeah,
It was like, avoid butter, avoid red meat.
Don't eat anything delicious.
Don't eat anything that tastes good, basically.
Right. That's what they told us.
That was the message.
That's the message a lot of health organizations are still promoting.
Still to this day.
To this day.
Like, butter is bad.
Don't touch it.
Okay.
But Taubes, he's like...
But Taubes is challenging that.
Challenging the whole idea. He points to research that shows that these carb-restricted diets, which often means they're higher in fat.
Right, okay.
They're actually associated with improvements.
Okay.
In a lot of the risk factors for heart disease.
Wait, are you saying that eating more fat could be better for my heart?
It's not that simple.
Okay.
But Taubes is arguing that just focusing on reducing saturated fat might be totally misguided.
Okay.
He's looking at studies that show that when people restrict carbs and they increase their intake of healthy fats, they see improvements in things like their triglycerides, their HDL cholesterol, their blood pressure.
Okay, I need a reminder.
Okay, yeah.
High triglycerides.
High triglycerides, bad. Bad. High HDL, good.
HDL, good.
High blood pressure.
Blood pressure, bad.
Bad.
Okay. So these are all...
Those are all the things on my blood work that they're always looking at.
Yeah, exactly. These are your key indicators of cardiovascular health.
Right.
And Taubes is suggesting that focusing on those carbs and not fearing those healthy fats might actually
have a positive impact on these things.
That's a big change in thinking, though.
It is.
Like, big change.
It's a paradigm shift.
Okay. What about LDL cholesterol?
Okay, yeah.
Isn't that the bad cholesterol?
That's the one we're always told to keep low.
That we're supposed to keep low, yeah.
Right, so that's another area where Taubes really dives into the details. The nuance.
Okay.
He explains that not all LDL particles are created equal.
Okay, that's interesting.
Right, it turns out that the size and the density of those LDL particles are more important than just your overall LDL number.
So it's not just looking at that number on my cholesterol test.
It's more complicated.
I need to know more about CAM.
We need more information like what kind I have.
Exactly. What kind of LDL particles are floating around in there?
Okay, so.
And, diets high in refined carbs and sugar, they tend to promote these small, dense LDL particles.
Okay, those are the bad guys.
The bad guys, okay.
Because they're more likely.
They can get stuck.
They get stuck.
In my arteries.
In your arteries.
Okay.
Cause problems.
So are you saying.
Contribute to plaque buildup?
That eating a bagel could actually be worse for my cholesterol than eating, like, a steak?
It's possible, yeah.
Okay,
It's mind-blowing.
This is mind-blowing.
I know, it goes against everything we've been told.
Everything I thought I knew. Okay, so.
But Taubes is highlighting research that shows that these diets that are lower in carbohydrates and higher in healthy fats, they actually lead to larger, fluffier,
okay.
LDL particles.
Those are the good ones.
Those are the good guys.
The good guys, okay.
They're less likely to cause problems.
Okay, I'm starting to rethink everything.
It's a revolution. Everything I thought I knew about fat. Huh? Okay. It's time for a new perspective.
So if we're not supposed to be afraid of fat.
Right, not all fat.
What's the real bad guy here?
Taubes is saying, it comes back to his main point, which is it's the carbohydrates.
It's those carbs.
Particularly the refined carbs and sugars.
Okay.
Those are the ones that are really driving the whole metabolic mayhem.
I'm eating a lot of those refined carbs.
Spiking that insulin.
Right.
Which is not only promoting fat storage.
Right.
But it's throwing off your whole metabolic health.
And that brings us to metabolic syndrome.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Metabolic syndrome.
Explain metabolic syndrome.
So this is like the big warning sign that your metabolism is out of whack.
Right.
It's a whole cluster of conditions.
Right. So it's not just one thing.
It's not just one thing.
It's like a bunch of things.
It's a whole bunch of things.
Okay, give me the list. So you've got high blood pressure.
Okay.
High triglycerides.
Okay.
Low good HDL cholesterol.
Okay, right.
High blood sugar. And abdominal obesity.
Oh, the belly fat.
The belly fat.
Okay.
And all of these things are linked to insulin resistance.
Which is when my cells just don't respond to the insulin as well.
Right. They become resistant.
And then my body overproduces it.
It's like, hey, we need more insulin.
And it just gets all out of whack.
It's a vicious cycle.
And that increases my risk of heart disease, stroke.
Or the bad stuff.
Yeah, all the bad stuff.
Type 2 diabetes.
Type 2 diabetes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not.
It's scary that just eating too many carbs and sugars can lead to all of that.
It is kind of scary.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to think about.
Okay.
But that's why Taubes is really emphasizing the importance of understanding
insulin.
The role of insulin.
Yeah.
And carbs.
Right.
In not just weight gain, but your overall metabolic
health.
Overall health.
Your whole system.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here's what I keep thinking about.
Yeah.
If what we've been told about fat and weight loss is wrong.
Or incomplete.
At
least. Yeah.
Like, what does that mean for, like...
Oh, that's a great
our own health and the advice we get from doctors?
It's a huge question.
Yeah.
And it's one that Taubes really wants us to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't shy away from that.
Yeah.
He really pushes us to think critically about the information we're given.
Yeah.
And consider. And to maybe be open to the idea that there's more to the story.
Yeah. So, like, are you saying we should throw out the food pyramid?
I don't know about throwing it out completely, but maybe we need to, like, redraw it a little bit.
Okay, so not all
fat is bad.
Yeah. So he's not saying we should eat bacon and butter.
Not for every meal.
Right. He's advocating for a more balanced approach.
Right.
That really prioritizes understanding how different foods impact our individual metabolism.
Okay, so more of a know thyself approach to eating.
Exactly. And that's what Taubes really emphasizes. Like, we're all different.
Yeah.
We've all got different hormonal and metabolic fingerprints.
Okay, so maybe some people do well on a low carb.
Some people thrive on low carb.
But for others, it's like...
torture.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting because that makes me think back to when we were talking about those studies where even with reduced calories, people weren't losing as much weight.
Yeah.
If it's not just about calories,
right,
maybe the focus should be more on
What are you eating?
Yeah, like what are you actually eating?
What kind of calories?
And how is it affecting your
hormones?
Your hormones, yeah.
It's about the quality of the calories, not just the quantity.
Okay, so how do we figure that out?
So that's where tuning into how you feel after you eat certain foods becomes really important.
Right.
So like, do you feel energized and satisfied? Or do you feel sluggish and like you need a nap?
And you want more.
And you're craving more.
Yeah, okay.
Taubes even suggests keeping a food journal.
Oh, a food journal.
Yeah.
So I'm not just tracking...
Not just what you're eating.
What I'm eating.
But how you're feeling.
But how it's making me feel.
Yeah.
Oh.
Physically and mentally.
So it's almost like being a scientist of your own body.
Yeah. It's like a little experiment.
This deep dive has given us so much to think about. It's empowering to realize we have more control over our health than we think.
Absolutely. It's about taking charge. Yeah. It's about being informed and making choices that actually align with our goals.
Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Gary Taubes' work, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to really
chew on?
Yeah, to chew on.
To think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so if what we've been told about fat and weight loss isn't the whole story.
Right.
What other assumptions about nutrition might we need to re-examine?
Ooh.
I'll leave you with that.
Okay.
That's something to ponder.
So don't be afraid to question things.
Question everything.
To explore different perspectives.
Yeah. And find
out what works for you.
What works for you.
Because everybody is different.
We're all unique.
Your health journey is your own.
That's right. Yeah. It's about, being curious and experimenting a little bit.
Yeah.
And seeing what works for you.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Because there's no magic bullet.
Right.
There's no one size fits all answer.
So it's less about following some strict meal plan.
Right.
And it's more about...
It's about developing that awareness of how your body responds to different things.
So tuning into my body's signals.
Exactly.
Okay.
How do you feel after, you eat a big bowl of pasta versus a meal with, some protein and healthy fats?
Right.
What's your energy level like?
Right. Do you feel
good?
Energized?
Yeah.
Or do I feel like, sluggish and I need a nap? Yeah. Or are you satisfied?
Yeah.
Or are you still hungry an hour later?
Yeah.
It's really about paying attention to those cues.
So it's like...
Because your body's talking to you.
Yeah, I'm like a food detective.
You are. You're a detective.
Okay.
You got to look for those clues, those little hints.
It's different for everybody, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like what makes me feel bad might make you feel great.
Totally. Yeah, what works for one person might not work for another. And Taubes talks a lot about, the role of genetics and those individual differences in how we metabolize things and how we store fat.
It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Not at all.
Okay, so this whole idea of personalized nutrition, I think that really resonates with what he's saying.
Yeah, it's about tailoring it to what my body actually needs.
Yeah, what works for you, your unique needs.
Okay.
And he provides some good tips, I think, for figuring that out.
Okay, what are some of those?
So, he suggests maybe trying like a lower carbohydrate approach for a couple of weeks and just seeing how you feel.
Okay.
Do you notice a difference in your energy level?
Yeah.
Are you sleeping better?
Right.
Are you less hungry?
Right.
And it's really about experimenting.
So I'm like conducting my own science experiment.
You're your own scientist.
In my kitchen.
In your kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of cool.
And he also emphasizes that you don't have to do anything drastic.
Right.
It's about making gradual changes and finding what's sustainable for you in the long run.
Right. It's not about being perfect.
It's not about perfection.
It's about finding something I can stick with.
Finding something you can live with. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's not advocating for like this all or nothing approach.
Right. Because that never works.
Yeah. Yeah. Restriction usually backfires.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been there, done that.
It's about finding a way of eating that you enjoy.
Yeah.
That supports your health.
That supports my health.
And makes you feel good.
Okay.
Without feeling deprived.
It's like a happy medium.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, and this whole deep dive has definitely made me rethink, my whole approach to eating.
Yeah.
It's not just about calories and fat grams and all that.
Right.
It's about understanding like the science behind it.
Yeah, the hormones, the metabolism.
Yeah, how it all works together.
Yeah, and how different foods impact your body.
And how I'm different from you.
Yeah.
We're not all the same.
We're all unique snowflakes, metabolically speaking.
That's a good way to put it.
Exactly.
So what's the final thought
you
want our listeners to walk away with today?
You know, after diving deep into Gary Taubes,
to this deep dive,
this whole world of insulin and carbohydrates is really about if what we've been told about fat and weight loss isn't the whole story,
right?
What else might we need to reconsider? I'll leave you with that.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to question things.
Question everything.
Explore those different perspectives and find what works for you.
That works for me.
For your unique body and your unique needs.
I love that.
I think that's the key.
It's a journey.
It is.
It's not a destination.
It's a lifelong process.
This has been so insightful.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.
See you next time.